Lately, I've noticed that a few IEMs are being tuned with a weightier response, but these perform almost like they are named QuietSea, and they are tuned to enjoy a sense of calmness for those quiet music listening sessions at the end of the day. Thank you to the folk at Rose Techniques for providing me with this demo unit and have made this review possible by doing so. So let's jump straight into how this is built. If you're not used to unboxing IEMs, these do come with a very premium unboxing experience. When you open the box, you're greeted with a very neatly printed exploded view of the IEMs, which is a very nice touch. Under it, you'll see the IEMs tucked away in a soft sponge, and you get a very premium looking hard shell fabric case with the brand name on it. Within the case, you get a high quality cable, small, medium and large ear tips, and a CX cable remover tool, and you get the literature as well. Moving on to the cable, it's a braided 4-stranded monocrystalline copper cable, which might be the toughest built cable I've seen for a set of IEMs, and is terminated to a 3.5mm jack on one end to connect to your DAC or music player, and the other end that connects to your IEMs are terminated to CX connectors or micro miniature coaxial connectors. They click in very firmly, so it's nice that Rose Techniques has provided a little clip to remove it for whenever it's needed. This cable doesn't come with a microphone, so your phone's microphone should take over when this is connected to it, should you need to use one for calls or gaming. Moving on to the IEMs, their faceplates and housings are made with a zinc alloy with a resin midsection, so you can see the inside of these a bit. They do have the QuietSea name on the faceplate. Thanks to having a zinc alloy, they're cool when you first touch and wear them, and eventually settle to your body temperature. The nozzles have an oval shape with the ear tips matching the same shape. Comfort-wise, I've not had any discomfort with these. They do sit very snug in my ears, so feel quite secure and firm. These come with 10mm dynamic drivers, have a frequency response of 20 Hz all the way up to 20,000 Hz, and have a very easy to drive low resistance of just 32 ohms. On a volume front, I did find myself listening to this a lot at about maybe 30% volume, but up at 35% volume, it does open up a bit more in the bass. But when you crank it up to about 40%, it does get a little too loud for me. So if you do intend on preserving your hearing, I wouldn't recommend listening to this above 40% volume over prolonged periods of time. But when you do reduce the volume, it's bound to thin out a bit, as every piece of audio does. It does lose its roundedness at lower volumes, but I found that even down low at as low as 20% volume, it does maintain a good amount of roundedness even in the lower frequencies. When it comes to its soundstage, this does perform like most other IEMs in this price segment. It has good left and right separation, and it has a well-centered phantom channel, and the soundstage does exist within a bubble in your head, but it does exist on a horizontal plane. And moving on to its imaging, on an imaging front, I think most IEMs in this price range are pretty sharp, so you can zone in onto any nuances you'd like to enjoy. So whether you're listening to the percussive range and you want to zone in onto various percussive instruments in the high frequencies, or even if you want to listen to the separation between vocals and instruments in the mid frequencies, it's very easy to decipher between these. High frequencies do have a bit of an elevation, but it stays clear from being too sharp. This range does carry a good amount of detail without being aggressive. Shimmers of percussive instruments have a richness to them without cutting into the ear, which makes listening to these for longer sessions that much easier to do. I found myself appreciating big band or jazz music a lot with these IEMs in this range especially. Brushes on a snare, shimmers from triangles, and the playful bounce from higher notes of a piano do come through with a good amount of enthusiasm while being well controlled. Listening to My Baby Just Cares For Me, performed by Jeff Goldblum and the Mildred Snitzer Orchestra featuring Haley Reinhardt on the vocals, the higher notes from the piano and brushes of the snare do manage to come at you with a defined approach without being aggressive, so these remain fun to listen to through this fun track. Mid-frequencies do have quite an elevation in the upper mids with a recess in the lower mids. This tuning can tend to make male vocals sound thin and not as rounded as I'd like, but it does let female vocals shine through quite well. The other negative with this tuning is that it can tend to lean towards being sibilant. Inhales, P's and S's are emphasized a lot more than they need to be, which can get a little unpleasant over longer listening sessions. I'd say this tuning is much better suited for instrumental listening than vocals. I listened to a few vocal tracks and they aren't where these IEM's strength lie, but when I moved on to listening to I Will Wait For You, performed by the Danish Finnish National Symphony Orchestra. The detail, separation and emotion really cuts through with this orchestra. The tuning Rose Techniques has chosen really does shine when listening to genres like classical, jazz or blues. This is where it's most comfortable. Lower frequencies do have an elevation compared to the lower mids, but it's not the largest sounding set of IEMs I've heard in this range. This amount of lower frequencies only cements what I feel about what these were tuned for: lighter, instrumental, classical and acoustic music. It's just right for these genres because when you throw anything heavier at it, those upper mids are more in your face than any bass. So electronic dance music isn't something a bass enthusiast would want to listen to on these for certain. But the bass isn't bloated, which is always a warm welcome, and it is tight and well structured, especially for easier listening music. Listening to Café de Flore by Dr. Rocket. This is a predominantly bass heavy track with the bass line being the heart of this track. It's present but not large enough for really enjoying a track like this. Everything else shines through though. The percussion, the guitar and claps are all clean sounding, but the bass is more suited to something more acoustic like Lover, performed by Jeff Goldblum and the Mildred Snitz Orchestra featuring Haley Reinhardt. It's more natural sounding with the upright bass and is very comfortable in its presentation here instead of struggling to push out an unnatural amount of bass. So to sum up, I really like how this is built. I like that it has that zinc alloy sort of metal finish to it. So it is cool to the touch, and when you wear it in your ears initially, it does warm up eventually. So I mean, it does give you that sense of being more sort of a luxury item than any plastic or resin finished IEM or earphone that's out there. And one thing that's really blown me away is the overall quality of this cable. This cable is genuinely very well done. It's thick, it's strong. I mean, it's not really a very thin cable like some IEMs do use, but at least in this price range, the stuff I've seen is never this robust. And another thing I do like is the MMCX connector, because it kind of pivots in place. So it's not sort of locked, like a 2-pin is locked in place. So if there is tension on that earphone, or should I say the IEM, if there's tension on it, it sort of pops out or pulls out. Whereas this, because it pivots, even if the cable is sort of tensing to a different place, the IEMs will stay in place, or it's not going to try and dislodge it from ears. So I think that this connector is actually a very good method, or should I say a system to use, especially if you're looking for a little more comfort with your IEMs. On a sound front, I think that this is a very nicely tuned set of IEMs. Now, no doubt it's not very heavy in the bass, and it can sort of get close to being sibilant, but it somehow doesn't really cross that threshold very much, unless of course if you listen to very old recordings that weren't recorded and mixed properly. But with a lot of newer stuff, it's just about at the cusp of breaking that sibilance barrier. I mean, it is okay, it's tolerable for me, but I think anyone who's sensitive to that range, it does have that sort of crazy boost in the upper mid range. But overall, I think its comfort front is in acoustic music, it is in classical, it is in jazz. It doesn't do very well with electronic dance music, so if you are a bass enthusiast, this is not for you. Even the bass it handles in classical music is more natural. The bass it handles with an upright bass sounds more natural. If you've heard one in the flesh, this is a truer sound of it than having an exaggerated sound in the lower frequency. So I mean, overall it's a very enjoyable set if you do like those specific genres, and if you do, I think this is for you. So overall, if you want a dedicated set of IEMs that you want to listen to classical music, jazz and blues with, I think this is a great set, and it is great value for money as well. So coming to the price, well, at the time of recording this video, this does have a maximum retail price of about 4,990 rupees, but you can make it yours for just 4,399 rupees, and abroad you can buy it for about $49.99 as well. So if you do want to make these yours, I will leave the links down in the description below for wherever you can pick these up. And overall, is it value for money? Well, I think considering its build and just cable quality alone, I'd say it's pretty damn good. But again, you need to keep in mind, if your preference in music is, you want nuance, you want detail, and you're okay not having heavy bass, just about adequate bass, if you've heard a natural instrument, this does it well. But the minute you want exaggerated sounds, I'd say this is not the set of IEMs to go for. But I've been listening to a whole lot of classical and jazz, and it's been absolutely a lot of fun. So I hope you found this video helpful and informative, and I do hope that I've helped you make some sort of purchase decision. If you would like to help support the channel, I'm sure you know exactly how to. But of course, thank you for tuning into Paul's POV for some sound advice.